Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, depending where you're listening or seeing this and what time zone you're in. We are here to talk about how fast one can move in their career ladder. But before we get into that, let's do a quick round of introductions. I'm Kayur. I'm an engineering manager at a company called Point Click Care. That's a healthcare startup. I will go to Vic next. Vic?
Hi, my name is Vic. I am a staff engineer at MetBright. I am a former engineering manager and engineering director who came back to the IC track. Mitra?
Hey, my name's Mitra. I'm an ex-founder and current engineering leader at various startups. Thiago?
Hello, folks. I'm Thiago. I'm currently a director of engineering at Nubank. Louie?
Hello, I'm Louie. I ran multiple engineering teams in big tech, and I've also worked at startups.
Thank you, everyone. So back to our topic of contention. How fast can one move up the career ladder? So the backstory for this is Gergely, I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, did an interview recently, and his newsletter featured our very own Louie. And there was a topic that took off on Twitter, and there was a lot of questions that we were hoping to clarify in our podcast today around how quickly should you progress in your technical career and what the upsides or potential downsides might be if you progress too fast. Is there such a thing as progressing too fast? Is that frowned upon? So there's plenty of pros and cons to both, and we wanted to get into the details and maybe even have panelists share their own journeys. Just talking to everyone before the show, we realized not everyone is on the same path. Not everyone takes the same time to get there. So it's great to get different perspectives so we can all decide for ourselves on which way we want to proceed.
So I'll just add a little context to the whole thing. I was basically interviewed with Gergely on the Pragmatic Engineer, and my career ladder specifically got taken out of context, and people started comparing their own career ladders to my trajectory. And I just want to say a couple of things about that, and then I guess you guys can jump in too, and we can discuss everything that Kier wanted to bring up. But basically, the first few years of my career weren't fast at all. Basically, I don't think going to senior engineer my career really took off once I joined this startup. If you happen to join a startup that ends up turning into a rocket very quickly, then I think they're going to ask you to do a lot of things that you wouldn't normally have to do under normal conditions. Hire a lot of people really fast, work insane hours, maybe work twice as much as the next person. And so the first 4 or 5 years of my career, by the time I joined Jet, I was basically a senior engineer, individual contributor. But in the very short time frame from there, I obviously moved up to director. And then by the time Walmart acquired us, I was a senior director running a portion of pharmacy for Walmart. And yeah, that was all. That last part was really fast. And that's usually the part that takes people the longest. But I got very lucky. And so I think people took that part out of context. And yeah, but I think that can happen if you end up joining a place that ends up moving really fast and they ask you to do a lot of crazy work. So I don't know if somebody wants to chime in on their trajectory and if they think that's too fast or whatever. Go ahead, Thiago.
Yeah, I have a few things to say about that. I would say I don't think at all 5 years to become a senior engineer is on the fastest side that I have seen. I feel though that from engineering manager to senior director of engineering, you went really quickly. But that is also not crazy. I have seen folks going from engineering manager to CTO. And I would say you surf the wave, right? I would say that's another thing that if the company is growing fast, you went along with it. And that is a thing that I was thinking this morning, and I actually tweeted about this, is there is a cost of saying no to things early, especially at the beginning of a company. And I think you said a lot of yeses, right, Louis? And you took crazy projects, I'm pretty sure, during Jet. And you put a lot of hours, a lot of energy into that for what, 5, 6, 7 years?
Yeah, basically until Jet was acquired in late 2016, but I was still running the Jet teams. Walmart kept Jet running for a while they were merging teams into other portions of the company. I was still running the Jet teams probably 2019 probably, and then flipped over. So yeah, Thiago, it was basically, I'd say maybe 4-year time span, maybe 3-year time span to go from engineering manager to senior director.
And I think this is something we touched on a previous episode, that is, the earlier you get in a startup, the more context you have, and the quicker are you able to navigate the org structure and get shit done in a way that even someone more senior joining the company a year later would struggle. And because you had that context and you're able to deliver a lot of things folks would start to pile up more things on Louie. Okay, Louie can deliver. Let's see how much he can handle. Let's give challenge. And if you're able to deliver on the promises and the company is growing and you are like almost being able to keep at the same speed, I would say is a lot easier to rely on someone that is inside rather than bringing someone that has years of experience but has no context of the company, of the architecture, of the engineers. So I think that is a way that I see to accelerate. And I now compare it to my own trajectory. I went from senior engineer to director of engineering in maybe 3 years and a half at Amex. But I actually, the moment I decided to leave, I had a VP offer on the table that I decided to leave on the table to join Apple. But the key for me was that I joined when the mobile engineering team at Amex was in the early days. We had 20 people. And I followed the move from, let's say, we used to have like an international app and a US app, and we combined into a global app. So we changed the architecture like crazy. We tripled the size of the team. We had Singapore, London, New York, and Phoenix. And I was there. I did 150 interviews in 2018. I was the person that did more interviews across the engineer chapter in the company. And that allowed me to get that engineering director offer because I was like surfing the wave and yeah, we're growing and my VP was pushing a lot on me, giving me a lot of stuff and I was stressed, but I was able to handle the load. I was able to deliver the crazy project that got assigned to me. And I could have had a similar trajectory as you had, Louie. I would say going from, let's say, I joined as a senior engineer, 2 months in, my engineering manager left. I was invited in. Then like a year and a half later, like going on that crazy hiring trajectory, I got invited to be director because there was so many engineers coming up and a lot of people didn't have context on. And I was able to onboard people, like onboard interns and talk to product. And I think that is the easiest way to grow. And I think it's a lot harder if you are in an environment that's going sideways, right? If you are on a company that's stable, is not growing like crazy, is going to take a lot longer because you're not going to get the opportunities. You're not going to have that crazy, exponential growth. Vic.
Sure. So moving fast up a career ladder involves a lot of luck and randomness, in my opinion. I went from being a senior engineer to an engineering manager in 2 years, and then I was a director of engineering a year later. We were growing fast, and I effectively served as quote-unquote CTO for the next 4 years, which is not really a position at the company. And I say quote-unquote because these titles are meaningless across companies of different sizes. But my responsibility at a startup our size was basically that I manage managers, and my tenure at the company gave me greater context than anybody else. At rapidly growing startups, if you're someone who doesn't say no, you basically become the person who's a catch-all for everything, and they crown you CTO and they pay you to make up for your nebulous big workload. This is, of course, much more difficult at established companies with established processes where you have to go through maybe training and or demonstrate that you actually know how to manage people, or they're just not growing as much, so you have to be there for a lot longer. This is me just saying that everyone's path is different and wild and crazy. If it's possible for someone to look at my trajectory and say, that's crazy, how did this person go from being a senior engineer to a director in so many years? It's context, right? Context matters. Mithra?
Yeah, to that point, I feel like something people miss a lot is that a title means something vastly different at every company. And it's really about your scope and what you do. I'm interviewing right now, actually, and people will ask, what are you looking for? And I have to tell them the kind of work I'm looking for. And sometimes it's a senior manager, sometimes it's a director, sometimes it's a VP. And it all depends on the company, the size, and the state that it's in right now and what they need. So I feel like when people see a career ladder like, oh, you became a senior director in 2 years, that's not fair. They're thinking about a senior director at their company or a situation there. And yeah, maybe that's a very different role that has very different expectations. Thiago or Louie mentioned how some companies, they require you to go, especially big companies, through a lot of steps. And it's almost like a tenured process. Whereas in startups, if you're there and right timing, like we've all talked about, you naturally have to take on so many of these responsibilities that you wouldn't even have the opportunity to at that level in a different company, in a big company. I know at my time at Amazon, it was really, you don't get promoted to SD2 until you've been there for at least a year and a half. And it's like very special circumstances if you get promoted before then. So it really is so dependent on your company and the size and the stage, I would say. Okay.
Thank you, Mitra. Yeah, I completely agree. I think for me, I was a software engineer for 2 years, and then I got promoted to the next level. And I was at that level for 6 years before I got to technical lead. That might seem like a lifetime to many people, but to Vic's point, BlackBerry was also going through a lot of attrition. They were doing a lot of layoffs. So you don't get that sort of growth even if you are an outlier, even if you are performing better than everyone else, because there aren't as many teams, there aren't as many new hires to justify growing or justify the promotions. So it's very different. There is a lot of luck at play, there is a lot of randomness at play, and obviously your skill is at play as well. And how hard are you willing to work for that next promotion? So back to Mitra's point, I was having a coaching conversation with another engineer recently, and they really wanted the next title because they feel stagnated at the current title they are at. But to Mitra's point, each title can vary from company to company based on the size of the company and the domain as well. Financial versus health tech versus are very different on what the responsibilities of each title are. So I'm just curious on what you guys prioritized, especially when switching companies or even within? Were you always after the title, knowing that once you get the next title, then a lateral move within the same company or to an external company is much easier? Or were you targeting compensation, knowing that a director pays more than an engineer, or a senior director, a VP pays more than? What should be the driving force when looking through your career ladder, and what were the driving forces for you guys?
I just want to sum up what I heard so far. So what I heard is that basically that old cliche that there are years where nothing happens, and then there's like months where your whole career could just be, and you have to be able to identify that, right? Like that's part of it, right? Like we all have opportunities, we all have luck. And when you see that, okay, if I push here, they're giving me what I want, then it's up to you to take the bull by the horn and do that if that's what you want to do. And it's not always the right decision for many reasons, because you're going to have to work crazy hours. You're going to have to probably trade off some of your life. And I was in a position back then where we didn't have kids yet. Excuse me. And so the point is that once that happens to you, it's up to you. Now, do you want to do it? And the truth is, the compensation doesn't 10x, right? So you are going to probably diminish your lifestyle significantly if you want to try to do something like that in that way in a very fast moving startup. And it's not like the comp is going to be 10x. It wasn't for me. It was because I saw what the engineers that reported to me made, and it was some percentage points higher, but it wasn't even 100% higher. Most of the senior engineers and above were in ballpark especially at the Walmart to the directors. It's not like the directors were getting paid 10 times more. They weren't even getting paid 2 times more. And so this is what I'm trying to highlight, is that you will sacrifice a lot if you want to get into that lane, and it's up to you to do that basically. But you just once you see that luck formulate, I think it's up to you. Like, do you want to jump on it, or do you want to just do what you've been doing? Thiago, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I have 2 questions to you, Louie. So question number 1 is, how many hours did you usually put in during the crazy times at Jet? And 2 is, at some point in your career, did you have engineers that were making more than you?
Yes, of course.
Reporting to you. Yeah.
Yes, of course. And one other thing I want to add is that, look, Jet, like I said, was very lucky. I got in there under 20 people, under 20 engineers. And then within basically 2 years, the company was doing $1 billion in sales. It sold to Walmart. It was moving fast, and the company grew to over 350 engineers from 20 when I joined. And so that tells, and so it wasn't just me, right? It wasn't just me that ended up in that environment. And what happened is Jet had some funny things about levels, and compensation, which is basically everyone at the same level got paid the same amount. The problem is a lot of the people that we were trying to bring in were at insane compensation levels from Google and Amazon or wherever we were trying to pick them up from. So there were times where somebody was same level as me, or even a level above me reporting to me. In startup world, they don't care. Like you're the manager of this team. They want the best people in that seat. And I was, man, if I could bring somebody in that is going to be better than me to work alongside me, that's only going to make me good. We're all going to rise together. That's how I looked at it. So my mindset was that's totally fine. And absolutely, we had people like that. And I'm not the only one. And there was a lot of people at Jet that had the opportunity and chose now not to step on the gas this hard, because like you just asked, Thiago, the hours were pretty crazy. And especially that first year, we had to, just so you understand, we had a hotel next to the office. And there was more than one occasion where they had to book a room for us to just go sleep there because we had to be in the next day. So that's the insane thing about a fast moving startup. And look, you didn't have to do that. No one was going to make you do that, but we were just releasing something major. And if it went down and whatever, it just, the team decided, look, we're just going to do that. We're just going to expense it. We're going to go sleep for a few hours and we're right back in. And okay, you can't do that for too long, but when you're releasing something, and that's what happened. And so I will say there was at least a couple of months where 12 hours pretty regularly I was putting, and then it calmed down significantly once we got into a groove and things like that. And so that's the trade-off. There's no magic, right, Mitra?
Yeah, I feel like what you're describing, you also see a lot with folks who maybe go on to be founders or become like the first few members of a new startup. You're putting in so many hours, doing so much work that you would never be asked to do at another company. And as a founder, especially, or an early employee, it's literally all hands on deck. So the learning that you have in such a short amount of time is immense. And you'll often find founders close their startup or sell it or whatever and get back to the workforce. They're going to elevated levels that, yeah, maybe they didn't put in the same amount of time in that role that you did, but they had this one or 2 year experience that was insanely intense and where they learned a ton. And I think a lot of what we've talked about in past episodes and we've learned is that a lot of senior positions, especially management, are a lot more than the technical aspect. It's a lot about managing people, managing difficult situations, working with people, hiring. And those are things you naturally have to do in a startup environment really well and often. So I feel, of course, that's almost rewarded in that you've had this outside experience just in a shortened amount of time, and you get to those levels or get the title maybe technically sooner, but you're also putting in a lot of effort.
I just wanted to make sure we are not all glorifying this career ladder trajectory. I know there are individuals that will go as hard as possible and get the results, and those are your superstars. But so Kim Scott has this book called Radical Candor, and there is on one axis you have the low performance and excellent performance, but on the vertical axis you have folks who are on a gradual growth trajectory and folks who are on a steep growth trajectory. So it's completely fine for somebody to be on a gradual growth trajectory. They don't want to put in the kind of hours that folks had at Jet, where they were sleeping in the hotel next door, or I'm guilty of it myself. I've slept on the couch in the kitchen because we had a release to get out. We were fighting fires till late in the morning, only to pass out on the keyboard. You get up, clean your IDE, and get back to it. But that's not sustainable, especially in the current era where there's so much emphasis on mental health and burnout, which we covered in detail with Marissa in a previous episode. I just want to make sure that we are all not saying this is the only way to climb up the ladder. There are sustainable ways. In my experience, there have been people who have other passions, right? The 9 to 5 is their means to sustain their other hobbies. One person was in trying to get into Olympic swimming. One person was a wedding photographer. There was a musician. People have their vocations and they don't want to put in more than the 9 to 5. How do you guys feel about people with different aspirations? Does everybody need to climb up the ladder at the same pace? Go ahead, Vic.
Yeah, I can go. I want to address something else really quickly before that. So there's been a shift in how you progress in your career, right? It used to be that you had to become a manager in order to get a raise. You had to do that whole thing, and that changed. Then it used to be that you had to overwork and overperform to get to the next level to get paid more. And that changed somehow. And I think it's two shifts that happen. One, people realize this is not what I want to do. And it's that exact thing you said, where this is a means to an end, and the end is that I'm no longer working. I want to work now so that I don't have to work anymore. And that slowly became a, wait, why am I overworking so that I don't have to work later? And you can just like, work-life balance has not been part of, I mean, I think if you did a Google trend for work-life balance, you'll notice that term did not used to exist not that all that long ago. People have made space for this. You should do exactly how much you want to do and really no more than that, because in a healthy company, you're going to get set up with a career guide that tells you how you're doing now and what it is that you need to do. And in the healthiest of companies, you don't have to perform at that next level for so long before you will get promoted. And if you don't get promoted and you're doing the things that you need to be doing, you should leave. You absolutely should not stay there and put up with them making you do a job that, has no reward structure to it. So you should definitely leave when you realize that you keep working hard and nothing is coming of that. Now, it's entirely possible that you don't want to get promoted. I've met a lot of people in my life who were perfectly happy where they were, and they don't care about the career guide. Am I meeting like expectations of my role? Great. I don't want to do anything past that. This is a means to an end. This is a job that is funding my family so that we can take vacations. We're a two-income family. We're doing our thing. And they absolutely did not want to do anything else. In fact, if you offered them a promotion, they were going to say, no, I don't want that. You're ruining my life. I don't want to do that. You're happy. Give me more money. That's fine. But I don't want more responsibility. Mithra?
Yeah, I think Vic's exactly right. It's really about, you can't do everything amazingly all the time. You have to focus. And I think the same thing with anything in your life. You have to focus on the top, 2 or 3 things that you think is going to have the most outsized impact for you and your job. And the rest, you have to be very clear with telling yourself and your coworkers and your stakeholders and whoever that this isn't a priority right now. And I think that's really the best way to establish some sort of work-life balance, but still progress towards whatever your goals are, whether it's delivering certain projects, learning new skills, getting promoted, whatever it is. And I found that work really well for myself in past companies. When I was a founder, I didn't have that. It's really hard to do that. And I did everything all at once because I was a solo founder and burnt out for so long. And I would say for about 2 years after that, I was really operating at a subpar level. But the other thing Vic said, which is really important, is you need to be working with your manager to figure out what it is you need, if the promotion's what you're looking for, and when you should be doing certain things. And that's what your manager's there for. They're there to help establish what that career ladder looks like for you and what those next steps are for you. And they should be shielding you from things that aren't helping you or helping your team and pushing you towards things that are. And I've been in a situation where I was doing work to get to the next level and already operating that next level, but then wasn't able to get promoted and got very unclear guidance on why. And like Vic said, that's when you have to leave and cut the cord and decide, okay, where else can I take these skills? So there's always, the best thing about our industry is there's always another place to go. I have these skills already. If the promotion or the title is what you're looking for, who's going to take me as is there? Thiago?
Yeah, so I think, okay, we did 2 episodes. We talk a lot about burnout and a lot about work-life balance and a lot about how to be strategic about those things. And by no means, when I say you have to work really hard, you have to say a lot of yeses. You have to pick things that are out of your comfort zone. And I'm not saying that's the only way or that's healthy for the long term. But I do feel that a lot of folks are trying to focus on work-life balance too early. And I would say another thing is it is okay if you want to do that because you have other areas of life that you are focused on. And I don't see that as a bad thing at all. And the point that I want to make is that it's possible to work a lot of hours and still have fun, especially when you're seeing the results, you're working with people that get you, you were kind of like, you're feeling that you're making an impact. And I don't know if you folks experience that, where in some companies I was working, let's say, a lot more hours than I did in others. But in others where I was working a lot less hours, I was burning out a lot faster. So I feel is not only a matter of how many hours you put. I think it's like there is the moment of your life that is like how much are you seeing the results of that, and how much is your family along with you on the journey and supporting you. So I think there is a lot of dimensions to burnout, and I don't feel that you say, oh, if you're working 12 hours a day, you're going to burn out. No, because there are a lot of things. If you have the right support, you're growing, you're buying the vision or having fun. I think is the hours are gonna you're not gonna feel that. So I think that is a really important thing that I see a lot of folks like saying, oh, if it is a startup, I'm not gonna join because I don't want to do 10 hours a day. And I think you need to take in consideration this. That you only get to say no after you prove yourself and you get to a position where you have credibility and goodwill in whatever company you are. So is if you join a company and you're trying to have quote unquote work-life balance in your first couple of months, I don't think you're gonna grow. I think is if the first couple of, let's say, stretch assignments you get, you're like, no. Yeah, I think it's almost the opportunity is gonna go to someone else. And I think Louie picked all those opportunities that were thrown at him, and that's why he went crazy, I think, on the career ladder. And Louie, were you having fun at Jetty, or it was really painful? I think that's something that we need to talk about too.
Yeah. So, Thiago, first of all, I want to say one thing. Momentum, career momentum is a very real thing. And for people that are listening, this is key, right? If you've been stuck at level for a long time and it's taking you forever to get to the next level, it's just like Taleb says, right? I don't know if you've read his books of how long things last and all these other things. He talks about, anyway, I won't get too much into that. But basically, if it's taking forever to get to the next level, then the level after that is going to take even longer, okay? So that's what I'm telling you. And so career momentum is a very real thing. And so if you're moving, then you have all the signal you need, whether you're going to continue to move fast. And so the point is, it's not like you can't figure out if this time is worth putting in, right? Like you can figure it out within 6 months. I'd say you can figure out, is this going to be worth it for me? And is it worth to put in crazy hours? And that's a decision you can make at that time. I think a lot of people are worried. Basically, it's not a coincidence that all the people that get promoted over and over again, they make that decision at some point and they have this momentum and then it just carries them. And then eventually they're not even working harder than everybody else, but they have this reputation that they're crushing it. They're superstars, whatever it is, but that's just momentum. And I saw multiple people, even at Walmart, which is obviously a massive company, employ 1.5 million people. It was the same group of people moving up over and over again. And it's not like they were getting preferential treatment. It's not like they knew the CEO. The CEO was changing. The CTO was changing. All these other things were changing, but the same people kept climbing. And it's fascinating. It's because they had that reputation all throughout. And so it's up to you at that point, whether you want to stick around and take advantage of that. And like I said, grab the bull by the horn or not. But basically, I think that's a really important thing. And I think, Thiago, you brought up that really important point about people trading off work-life balance. Like I had very good work-life balance when I was at the bank. It was great. It was like they weren't stressing me out, but I hated my job. And when I got to Jet, and they were paying me more than Jet. I took a pay cut to join Jet because Jet was a startup. And so the point is, I was working more hours. I was working more hours for less money. So on the outside, I would seem crazy. But when I got in there and I saw how fast things were moving, I saw how fast we were hiring, I saw how much I was being challenged, I saw how much I was building. Those were the indicators to me that no matter what happens, I'm accruing a ton of value for my career long term. I built more here in the last 6 months than I built in the bank the entire time I was there. I built more here. And so those are the signals. And then you can decide, do you want that or not? And if you don't want that, you don't have to put the gas. You don't have to go after promotion. That's totally up to you. These things don't always exist, right? They're not always there. At the bank, if I would have worked 12 hours, it wouldn't have made a single difference. It wouldn't have made a difference. And that's crazy to burn yourself out if you're not going to get rewarded. And so that's just a regular job. It's 9 to 5. It's a great job. They're paying you very well, but that's it. That's all it is. Don't kill yourself. But if you are in an opportunity where you could do this, then it's up to you, right? Do you want to do it or not? It's up to you. But I think it's really important to identify that. You have to be able to identify that. And to your question, Thiago, if I was having fun, I had the time of my life. I was working like crazy. Within 6 months, I hired my first few teammates. Within a year, I had, a full-blown team getting ready to split into 3 teams. And of course, it was so challenging. I had to hire. I had to talk to the business. We had to come up with a roadmap. I had a product partner. I had to continually work with what are we going to build next. We had multiple products in production that needed to be kept up. I was waking up middle of the night getting paged. Things were escalating because my engineers were sleeping through the page. And I had to go in there, check the logs and just fix the thing because we're on the same team. And it's up to you if you want to do that. But I do think it doesn't present itself all the time. And when it's there saying, I just want work-life balance, well, that's fine. But then don't get upset if somebody is running laps around you. And for me, at that point in time, like I said, I didn't have kids. I come from poverty. And so my mindset was like, shit, I might be able to get out of poverty. I might never have to go back to that life again if I could just make this work and if I can just run it up. And that was my mindset. And so I did what I had to do, but not everybody needs to do that. It's up to you, but you have these signals. You don't need to kill yourself for somebody else for no reason and not get rewarded for it. I'm super against that. I'm never going to be the person to tell you, work 12 hours a day. That's a terrible idea unless you're seeing the rewards for it.
I just had to ask, and any of my co-hosts can feel free to jump in. So this is an ideal path, right? Like where you are getting on the momentum and going from level to level. But what are some of the downsides to getting promoted this quickly? Is it possible that an individual that hasn't reached a certain level of maturity is now at a position where they don't have the depth? And this could be technical depth, this could be the people skills, this could be like empathy, where yeah, they were crushing it. They were in the right place at the right time. They had luck supporting them. And now they're at the top of the ladder, but they got there, let's say 5 years, and now they're managing 400 employees, but they have no idea how to run an organization of that size. They don't have the aptitude to.
I think that's very unlikely, right? Like I see that come up and it's very unlikely because here's the thing. Nobody gives you free money for no reason. Nobody gives you more and more responsibility for no reason. Not at Jet, not at Walmart. Nowhere in the world does somebody say, here you go, manage 400 people and fuck this whole thing up. No one's ever going to do that because why would they do that? It'd be crazy to do that. They're going to destroy their company, their organization. And so the point is, yes, of course, I made mistakes as I was growing and I saw other people that were growing fast also make mistakes, but they were not, if they were career ending mistakes, I would have been fired. I would not be promoted again, the following year and given more responsibility. And so that's the thing. You're going to make mistakes in that environment. You're moving crazy fast. You're going to have to deal with all kinds of issues that you're compressing. You're taking a whole bunch of time and you're compressing it. But the reason why you're compressing is because you're putting in some crazy hours. And that's not the only way to do this, but I'm just harping on the fact that I think that's a fallacy, basically, that somebody got to senior director. They're running now this massive pharmacy is a $35 billion business, 100 million customers. There's all these engineers that are working. We're modernizing it. If I was doing a shit job, they would have fired me. They wouldn't have given me a bigger bonus the following year. So the point is, I think it's very important to highlight that. Nobody just keeps pushing you up. There's this Peter principle at play that at some point they're going to cut you off, right? Just like at the bar where you're too drunk or in the casino where you've burned too much money, they're going to cut you off. And what happens at fast moving startups, that's exactly what they do. You go as far as you can until you can't anymore, and then they stop. They cut you off and they say, that's it, you're at level now. And the reason why they do that is because they need people to move that fast, but not everybody can do it. Some people at some point in time say, this is just too much. This is just too much. And so they stay right there and they're perfectly happy. And again, there's nothing wrong with that because like I said, the money difference is not that big. It's like 15%. You're getting a 10 to 15% raise per level. So you just do the math. That's it. That's all you're getting every level. And so it's very important to highlight that. For me, my mindset was, I'm going to make this extra money. Obviously, I really needed it, but also I thought I could land a bigger role somewhere else, make even more money later. That was my mindset. Luckily, I didn't have to do that. But I think it's a fallacy, basically, here. So I just wanted to address that you're going to get to manage 400 people and you don't know what the hell you're doing. That's crazy. No one would do that. Mitra, you want to go?
Yeah, no, a lot of good discussion, a lot of good points that we've been talking about. This idea of growing too fast, what are you missing, mixed with work-life balance. One story I want to tell really quickly. So my dad actually started as an engineer at Walmart, where Louie, I know you worked most recently, and this is, they immigrated to America to work at Walmart, both my parents. And my dad grew from I think a temp engineer to a senior director in 2 to 3 years. That is unprecedented for sure. And I would ask him about this all the time as I'm growing in my career and when I was in college, how did this happen? And he would always point to managers or people in his org who saw his potential to do more and kept giving him those opportunities and mentoring him, but also just luck, a ton of luck and timing. But I think to Louie's point, they're not going to give him these opportunities and let him grow without thinking that he will do a good job. Now, to go back to that though, I think we talk about, you have to sacrifice, you have to be willing to put in the hours. In the background, what was happening is my mom had to quit her job. We had people at home to take care of. I was a new baby. There's a lot of sacrifice going on around. And I think we have to acknowledge that not everyone is able to put in those hours or put in that time. And what I see now is my dad has had a long career being a tech leader at many great companies and reached the apex. He's at that CTO level, COO level, but he's also pretty young still. So I think we forget that our careers are long, our life is long. We don't have to rush and put in all our time and all of our, energy into a few years to get to this point because we're seeing that's what seems successful. I think age very often makes us think like we need to get things done sooner, but something I think a lot about as a woman in the industry who naturally I also have other requirements and things outside of work that I have to think about, having a family, and that impacts me a lot more than it would my husband, is that it's a long career and those jumps and those milestones will come, and I can have spurts of putting in that time when it makes sense, but also make sure I'm doing it where I will be recognized, where I will be rewarded for that opportunity, like I think Louie said as well. Thiago, go ahead.
First, I want to, double down on what you said, Mitra, and I feel the same. I think, like, usually men have a lot more opportunity and because they have a much better support system from society and from family. We have to acknowledge that. I don't think is crazy. Is getting better, but still far from. And I think minorities too. So I think that's like 100% there. I was actually going to ask a few more questions to Louis that he already answered on the chat, but I'll ask anyways, because I actually so the first question I actually got wrong because I was going to ask Louis, how many days of vacation were you able to take and Jet on your first year? And I was expecting that he was still able to take vacation because I feel that like, you can't, not because you're working crazy hours, there will be hours the release, and then after the release, there will be some time to catch up, and you need people to take time off. It's not that you're going to work, it's unsustainable, I feel, to work like years without taking a day off on 12 hours a day. I think that's the recipe to burnout. So I was expecting Louis to say I was able to take half a week off here and there. And the answer was like year one, he took no days off.
Yeah, so I'll just address it. Basically, year one, it was very difficult to take time off. And my first baby was born. I was actually not able to take much paternity leave. Jet did have a very nice paternity policy, but it became a running joke because we were all like, you have this, I think 4 months, right? That was their paternity leave. 4 months. I think that's what it was. 4 months. But if I would have taken 4 months as a startup, if I would have taken 4 months from when my baby was born, I probably wouldn't have come back to anything. Like 100%, I wouldn't have come back to anything. And I'm not just saying that. It's 100% true. And I recognize lucky I am because my wife wouldn't have been able to do that, for example. She wouldn't have been able, she gave birth to our baby and I was back at work like 4 days later. So I took 4 days, even though we had 4 months. But you know what? They recognized that people couldn't take this time off. And I wasn't the only one that had a baby while we were there. There was a lot of other great engineering leaders and engineers that had kids there. And what happened was they amended the policy to give everybody a $5,000 bonus per month they didn't take off. And it was tax-free bonus. So on top of your salary. So they amended it like way later, and then they backtracked it to everybody that had a baby because they were like, this is a joke, right? No one's actually taking 4 months off. They can't. It's a startup. Like it's not going to exist. It sold in 2 years. The whole thing was just 2 years. You blink and it was gone. And so that's what happened. And so we had this baby, and I love my daughter. And with the second one, I took 3 months off, and I really got to enjoy it. But at that point in time, it was a decision that my wife and I made. And if I didn't have her support, if I didn't have all these things, I recognize how lucky I am. I'm not saying I did it all on my own. Definitely not. And so it's very important to highlight all of that a lot of people just don't have. The opportunity presents itself and they can't step on the gas because they got other things and it's not that easy. And so I was in that spot, and the baby came up towards the end of the year, and I took a few days off, but really I took no time off that year pretty much. And they back paid me a very nice bonus which was, they pay the taxes on it. So when I got the money, because bonuses are taxed very heavy, so I got 20 grand or 20 something thousand, but they really had to give me like 35,000 or something to make up for the taxes. And that was a very nice thing they did, but they recognized like, this is a joke, right? Really, people can't take off 4 months. It's in the policy. They could if they want to, but chances are things would fall apart. And I saw how well things were going. I didn't want things to fall apart. Frankly, I wanted it to succeed because I wanted to carry me to the next stage. And that's what happened. But I was very lucky. So I just wanted to address that, Thiago.
Yeah. The second question, I think, about the other point you said, that the illusion that, okay, that like you can keep it up and growing even if you're not good enough for that position. I would say, so there may be two factors there. I mean, one is like maybe the career ladder didn't exist, or maybe the career ladder was fuzzy for the first couple of years. So the moment that they create the career ladder, they look, okay, how many people Louie has? Oh, he has 100 people. So what level he will be placed? And maybe it was not like a clear promotion. Oh, we need to have interviews and promotion panels and a promotion package. I think that might be one factor. But the other thing is like, how many really senior directors or VPs that had 10, 20 years of experience did you see at Jet or even out Walmart joining and after a few months not working out, right? Was that a common thing, Louie?
Yeah,
was the bar
absolutely.
that
It happened multiple times. And at both places, basically, where I don't want to name anything or whatever, but I saw it happen multiple times where startups are moving fast, and like I said, they'll let you burn out. It's up to you. You want that? No problem. For them, it's no problem. Here you go. All the responsibility you want. Put it on your back like the donkey that you just overload. Just keep putting on until they can't move anymore. And that's what they'll do to you. So it's up to you to take that. And some people took on too much. And then two things happen there. They burn out and quit. They stop doing the work and they get fired, whatever it is. But basically, I saw that happen, Thiago. And that's an unfortunate thing. But you have to understand yourself for what you're signing up for. It's not no free lunch. Like you're taking on this thing and then you have more people. You're responsible for their careers too. And that's a huge part of leadership is the people. You're responsible for all those other people now that you're hiring. And you have to keep an eye on all of them and all of that career-wise. Vic.
So much has been said. There's definitely a thing about rising rapidly through the ranks. It's possible to rise to a level that you realize you hate because you haven't put in the hours learning whether you like doing it or not, which I think is a huge problem that happens. People get promoted into a level that they don't realize that they actually don't want to do that job. It's a little bit Peter Principle, but for high performers, it's actually invisible burnout because you don't want to disappoint anyone that you can't do this job. So you try your hardest to not be incompetent. And you end up burning out because you're overworking. Another thing, I'm of the opinion that if you want to get promoted, you have to do promotable things. In some places, that requires you to work crazy hours, do heroic things, take on more than you can handle, and that it's not for everyone, and you certainly don't have to put up with it. I did a lot of crazy things. I don't recommend them. I did multiple jobs for a while at the same company. And actually, you know what? Let's talk about babies. Okay, we had a baby. We only had 3 weeks of parental leave at my company, and I had so much work to do that I broke up that 3-week period into multiple chunks. I took 1 week before my wife went to work, and then I took 2 after she went back, and I used to take the baby on calls, wear in a sling. I was like, she doesn't care. There's pictures of me, people have taken screenshots of me attending calls strapped to a baby. People at my work used to joke about how having a baby was going to turn me into a different person, and it did. It turned me into someone who gave a shit about things other than work. Find yourself a company that has a nice gradual path to promotion if that's what you want, but don't go work at a FANG and then complain that you only want to learn during your 9 to 5, but also get promoted from senior to staff in 6 months. And that's a whole different topic, title inflation. Because it's just not going to happen. You have to have the right expectations, and your expectations have to match the place that you're working at.
Thank you, Vic. This ties in directly with the title inflation. So maybe, Thiago, if you want to speak to your experience, you're currently a director, you were previously a manager at a different company, but despite doing lesser hours previously, you find yourself happier today. So I know the common misconception is the higher you go on the corporate ladder, more responsibilities. Sure, there's more pay, but more responsibilities, which means more hours, which means you're more stressed out and more likely to burn out. But here you find yourself happier on a higher rung of the ladder. Do you want to share your experience?
Definitely. I actually, this is a really good story. So I was at Amex. I was a director of engineering, and then I started to interview for the things. I got 3 offers, and I think I talk about this. And then the titles are inflated, right? So I would say I was managing around 30 people, 30, 35, I think close to that at Amex when I left. And I was director there. I had four squads reporting to me, whatever it was. And then I got offers from the FANGs to be a senior manager. So basically I stepped down. And I would be managing 5 to 7 people initially with the plan to grow back and have to climb the career ladder again. And even though you would think that because the scope was smaller and I was making more than double that I was making as a director in a FANG, I would be a lot happier there. But I think a few things happen, and I think that's beyond money and beyond how many people report to you. There are like a lot of dimensions that you have to consider when there is that thing that Mitra said a couple of episodes ago that stuck to my head, the person company fit. And I feel that play a big role. And I was miserable at there because the culture at the place was not valuing my skill set and what I was bringing to the table. And I was not happy with the way that things were there, I would say. So I don't want to give too much about that to not get in trouble, but I would say the leadership style was different. The secrecy versus transparency was different. If I take a slider, the top-down decision making versus bottom-up or versus like more collaborative approach was different. There were a lot of dimensions that I didn't take in consideration. I only look at money and, okay, I'm moving back, but I'm more than doubling salary. So let's do this. But I was doing less hours and I was burning out faster than I ever did in the previous like 14 years of my career. And then here I am, like a year later, I decided to take a 3-month break. I took a mini retirement because I was exhausted and I never got to that point close to burnout, doing less hours than I did at Amex and at the previous startup that I worked, like maybe half of the hours. And now I'm back to be a director and I'm putting a lot of hours sometimes. And no one is asking me to do. I'm giving yes to a lot of these opportunities that are appearing and yeah, let me do this. And I'm having fun and people actually really value what I bring to the table. And I feel that I'm making some impact. And that's the kind of feedback that I'm getting that I was not getting. Everything else is normal, I would say, family-wise, health-wise. I'm still doing the same things that I used to do. I'm still exercising. I'm still doing my therapy. I'm still like whatever. And I'm just finding ways to put more hours because I'm having fun and I look forward to that. I'm reading stuff. I'm like working on RFCs. I'm talking to people and is working. So he's like, I'm burning out faster because I'm putting more hours. No, I'm just like, it's almost like I don't need time to recover, to decompress.
Go ahead, Louie.
Yeah. So I just want to touch both safety and title inflation real quick. I think safety is such an important thing, right? Moving up in a safe environment. And sometimes startups, when they're moving really fast, it's hard to find safety. They will, again, like they'll load you up and then you'll burn out or you'll end up leaving. And that was one of the things that we saw other people on other teams do, that like burn out or some of the other things that we talked about. And that was one of the things that we set up on our team, was this idea that like, hey, you're going to try management. Okay. I think you're going to be great at management. I need you to try management. But if it doesn't work out, okay, I promise you're not going to get fired. Okay. We're going to backtrack it. You're going to go right back to the role you had and it's going to be okay. And that's reluctantly, I've pushed a couple of people to do that job. And because I needed them. But we try to bake that safety into our team. But I think that's so important. Like you need that safety in order to take on these other things. And you need to know that if I'm going to a different scope, I'm going to be responsible for different things. Like we talked about that a little earlier. So I just wanted to touch on that. I think really important to find a place that'll give you that. It's really hard if you're in a fast moving startup, but try to set it up yourself somehow. And then I want to talk about title inflation because it is a real thing, right? It's rare that somebody could move that fast, whatever. It's not, and it's not just me. I was on LinkedIn and people were commenting on Gergely's post of the pragmatic engineer. And there was multiple people that basically said, we've done it faster and good for them. But the point is, when we talk about this idea of title inflation, why is that happening? Companies are being built faster than ever in history, right? From day one to $1 billion in sales in 2.5 years. Show me another period in history where that happened. It took Amazon a long time to do that. The scales are different. The internet has changed the game. And what's happening is now you build a company online and insane things happen. Look at the way sort of Instagram grew, or look at the way TikTok grew. Imagine if you were part of that team that initially put that thing out there. What do you think's happening to those people? Is this crazy luck that they stumbled upon, but they probably had to put insane hours to keep up with that growth, rewriting systems. As I can promise you, they didn't anticipate the scale that they got. I can promise you they had to rewrite things. That's what we had to do at Jet. And it was crazy hours, obviously. But the point is, yes, the titles are inflated because people are being asked to do crazy shit that they've never been asked to do before. People used to have a 30-year career and they used to retire at the end of it. And they used to stay at one company and that was it. And it was perfect. And it was and the world was very even. I mean, I'm talking like 30, 40 years ago in recent history. But the point is, companies are being built very fast from the ground up, from zero to insane scale. And so that could inflate titles. Your title's not going to be inflated in a company that's growing at a very sort of slow pace. And so just to harp on that, just because you get that new title, no one gives it for free. No one gives you a raise for free. No one gives you all that responsibility. They give it to you and they expect you to do the work. And then if you can't do it, unfortunately, it's not going to end well. But anyway, so that's all I had on those two.
Just one thing I want to add is that I would say maybe title inflation is a strategy for some startups to get talent now. And they get those folks that are on the edge between senior and staff, and they bring them as staff. And is okay, one might say that's really bad for the industry, why you're doing that and all that, but it might be a valid strategy. And if all you want is that opportunity and like someone that's gonna give you like that kind of like vote of confidence, and I think it helps a lot of people, and it is a lot of work too. But I think that also has a factor there. I would say the market is so hot that the only way for companies to hire sometimes is to get the title, is to get someone that opportunity they want that they probably are not going to be able to get at a big FANG because of the promotion process, because of the really like sideways growth that's happening now at the big techs. But I think that's a really valid point, Louie.
Thank you. Yeah, I've seen that happen at companies where I've worked at, where you were encouraged to take on the role of an engineering manager. And if either you hated it or your team hated you, then you go back to being a staff engineer, and there is no stigma associated with the role. At least you tried it. Now you're well-rounded. You know exactly what you like and what you dislike, what you're good at and what you need to work on. So definitely a very valid point. Just to wrap things up, one of the quotes that comes to mind is the one by Chris Grosser. Opportunity doesn't happen, you create them. And I think a lot of folks here created those opportunities for themselves, pushed really hard when they had the opportunity, and then got to the next level. So thank you to all my co-hosts. This was great chat, and we will see you in our next episode. Thank you. Bye.